really quickly. In case you didn't soak your lentils, it's not mandatory. I do recommend rinsing it, and usually, even on the pack, they'll say to rinse them. I've been soaking mine for like an hour and a half. If you want to put your lentils right now into a bowl with filtered water and soak them while we chop all the other ingredients, at least you'll get a little soak time. Why do we like to soak the lentils? It helps with digestion. It takes off the outermost outer layer of coating, and it also helps to soften and sort of sprout them if you kept them longer. Um, but at the very least, it sort of takes off that coating that makes them easier to digest. And if you soak them for at least 30 minutes, they do tend to soften and it's going to reduce the cook time. So, again, don't worry if you didn't do that. You can soak them now. We can even just rinse them. And if you rinse them, do rinse them for like a minute. So you'll put them in a strainer and rinse them. But for now, you're going to set your lentils aside and we're just going to get to chopping. So I'm going to get my peeler. I'm going to grab my knife and we'll get going. So I also have fresh tomatoes here because I think rather than the canned, and so when I buy canned, I get the no salt added organic diced tomatoes. But I had fresh tomatoes, so I think for me, I might use the fresh tomatoes today. Gonna take the carrots and we're just gonna peel the carrots. So one of the other things that I like about making soups is once you get them going, you have time to kind of work on something else while the soup is boiling. So I thought today, once we get everything in the pot going, we can spend a little time talking about meal prep, maybe pantry staples. We'll see. We'll see where we end up. But for now, and sometimes I don't know if you're like me. I tend to be in a rush for whatever reason. I guess I'm impatient, something I'm working on. But also maybe from growing up in restaurants and everything's like done on a timeline. But I try to tell myself to take my time. Whenever I rush, that's usually when I cut my finger or myself or burn something because I get distracted trying to do something else or too many things at once. So just be mindful of your energy when you're cooking. I'm going to rinse my celery. I'm going to use 3 stalks, 2 carrots. So again, here's another variable. If you're making more soup or you're making less soup, you can change the amounts of the vegetables that you use. So let me rinse my celery. All right. And now we're ready to chop. I'm going to set that aside, this away. And now I'm going to put the celery and the carrots in the same bowl because they cook at the same rate. I'm going to put them in the pan at the same time. So chop off my little tips. And you want to try and cut them to be pretty uniform in size. So I'm going to go up the carrot, and right about there, I feel like the width of the carrot changes. So I'm going to stick those guys in. And then I'm going to half this part of the carrot and keep dicing. So you just, it doesn't need to be perfect and it really, no big deal, but you want to try to make them uniform in size as best as you can. Okay. Such an easy soup to make, really high in iron. Good again for any meal, breakfast. And if you wanted, I made a piece of salmon for lunch today, but if I didn't, you could pull out a piece of fish and really easily cook that piece of fish while the soup is simmering. And then you have a really nice meal, really light and easy. Tonight, I think, and what I recommended in the recipe is just a little piece of either some really good quality sourdough bread and a little piece of cheese. So I chose to get Montego tonight, but maybe you got feta, maybe you got something else, but a really good quality, nice cheese. I just suggested for experimental purposes, in case you haven't tried, to try treats for the dogs. So we have dogs. Obviously, you guys know if you've been on a live because they're always barking. So when I drop, especially something like celery, I know I have little vacuums that are going to come pick it up. Anyways, that just distracted me from what we were saying. Anyway, here we go. We got our celery and the carrots. I'm going to set it aside. let's get to the onion. This onion's a little big. I couldn't find the onions today. This knife isn't sharp either. The onions today were a little large. So I'm just going to take about 3/4 of this onion to sort of match the size of the amount of the carrots and the celery. When you're looking at the exact ratios on the recipe, it's 1 small onion, 2 carrots, and 2 celery stalks. So you can see I did the 3 carrots. Uh, yeah, I did. No, I did 2 carrots, but they were pretty big. And then 3 celery stalks to even that out. And then I'm going to probably do about, like I said, 3/4 of this onion. And I feel like that's pretty even. And you can always, just in case with onion, because you can use it in so many different recipes to cook, uh, just keep it. That's why I like to keep it separate. And I didn't mix it, or I'm not going to mix it with the celery and the onions, because if here's that 1/4, I'm just going to set aside. We'll deal with that later. But as I start chopping, if I feel like I have enough onion, you can always set it aside and use even the chopped onions for so many other things. So now just chopping up the onions. And again, you want them to sort of match, maybe a little smaller, the onions in size. It's actually totally preferential. I'm going to make my onions a little bit smaller than the carrots and the celery. I'm going to be careful. Again, don't rush when you're chopping. Take your time. Be careful how you hold your fingers with your vegetables. I would love to. I should go to I always want to do that, go to like a professional class, cooking class. I'm sure I would learn so much. I'm pretty kitchen taught, I'll say. I won't say self taught because I learned from the others around me, but I've just learned by being in kitchens. Whether it's with my mom, my dad spends more time in the barbecue or in the restaurant. So like now I kind of feel like I might do one more slice of onion, but I think I'm going to save this other chunk. I think that's enough onion. And then I was making some baked broccoli on the side, so I'm going to pull that out. Okay, back to my chopping. So I know a lot of people struggle with people eating different things in the household. This is a perfect example tonight that Josh does not like lentil soup. And if you don't know who Josh is, that's my husband, but he does not like lentil soup. And so before I made this, I just threw a nice grass-fed New York steak on the cast iron, and then I just baked some broccoli that was made a little delayed, but he can still eat it, and a side salad. So that's what he's having. I'll try to convince him to eat some of this lentil soup, but I doubt I'm going to be successful. He's more of the pure. That's why he likes the pureed soups. He can sort of just down them, as he says. Okay. All right. So we got that. Now let me get another little separate bowl for the tomatoes. If you If you are using the can, then you don't need the bowl. Just go ahead and open your can. Otherwise, I'm going to just chop my tomatoes up here. If you're using fresh tomatoes, awesome. And again, my equivalent of tomatoes is probably not going to be exact same with the recipe. It calls for the whole can. And it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's still going to taste super good. Those are the little kinds of things that you can sort of switch up. This was a little piece of tomato I had left over from earlier, and I didn't want it to go to waste, so I saved it for the lentil soup, knowing that I was going to be putting in tomatoes. All right. Chopping up all the tomatoes. And again, you're still trying to be uniform in size. Now, these could be their own size because they're not cooking together. So the things you want uniform in size are the things that are going to be cooking at the same time. So the tomatoes are going to go in after, and then it's fine once everything's in there, but it's for that preliminary part where you're sauteing the vegetables before they go in. And so you want things uniform inside so they cook in a consistent way and you can add things in a proper way. So the tomatoes, because you're canned, it's already done for you. But if you're using fresh like me, you just even think about the can of tomatoes. The chunks are kind of uniform in size. I'm gonna do one more tomato. This goes there. All right. Almost done here. These are just kind of like a rough chop what I'm doing. I'm just kind of trying to make them all around the same size. Perfect. All right, tomatoes done. I'm gonna rinse off my board. So we've cut our onions, our celery, and uh, carrots, the tomato. Now I'm gonna throw away, sort of clean up, so we clear off our cutting board. There's some broccoli there for you. No. Okay. All right, next we got to smash up the garlic. So grab your garlic cloves. It says three cloves minced. If you're following the exact recipe, 3 cloves minced. I'm gonna do 4 because I like garlic, so I'm gonna do 1 extra clove. I mean clove. I keep saying clove, garlic clove, guys. So 1 extra garlic clove. So again, it was 1 small onion, 2 carrots, 2 celery stalks, can of diced tomatoes. I used 3 and like a half fresh tomatoes. I added an extra celery stalk. So these are the things you can play with. You're just trying to keep ratios proportionate. And again, you're using a recipe as the guide, but you're also doing and cooking to your preference and to what you like and what you have in your kitchen. All right. Chop up the garlic. Let me get a little separate dish for my garlic. And then if you guys ever have any questions or feedback, because a lot of people just watch the recording and aren't live with me, so I'm talking into the abyss. But if you have any questions, you can always message me or email me. Or if you have any like fun ideas, things that you add to your lentil soup, I would love to hear. So there's a chat on Substack. I sent out a message today showing a picture of my lentils. I know the Substack app can be confusing when you first get on it. But once you get on it, you'll see that there's chats from the people you subscribe to. So if you subscribe to me, whether you're paid or unpaid, you can see most of my chats. I don't think I've ever done, unless it was by accident, a paid chat yet. So you can get up on the chat and you can share pictures. You can ask questions to the group. You guys can help each other out with recipes and things like that. Ideas, meal prep ideas. It's sort of like Facebook groups um, on Facebook. So that's the chat. So you can either email me. If you have my number, you can text me, DM me, send me a message. I'd love to hear about your delicious lentil soups and any creative things that you add to your soup. Okay, so here's the garlic. I'm going to set that aside. All right, let's double check our recipe now. What else do we need to do? All right, we got. Okay, let me grab my broth. So you're going to get your 6 cups of either broth or water. If you were intending to use broth and you don't have 6 cups, don't worry. You can always just balance what you don't have with water. And say you do have enough broth, but when you add all your vegetables and your lentils in, you realize that you want your soup a little brothier, just add more water. So I'm going to use, I love, I either get bona fide bone broth that's frozen, or I love these Pacific. And these also come in these like little one single servings. I love to have those on hand as a staple pantry too. So here is my broth. We have the parsley. So we're going to chop fresh parsley, but we can do that after we get the soup going. Seasoning I'm going to use for sure. So for sure, I'm going to use salt, bay leaves, and pepper. That's typically all that we put in our lentil soup. Let me get rid of Coco. Hold on. Coco, okay. Okay. So I'm just going to use these three things. What was interesting about the recipe I found, they also suggested some cumin, some coriander, paprika, and optional turmeric if you wanted to make it anti inflammatory. So for me, just for the sake of fun, I'm not going to put cumin because I know the flavor of cumin and I'm not interested in that. But I think I might add a dash of coriander. So I'm going to leave that out and see. In terms of paprika, I feel like paprika is a great thing to add. It doesn't have a ton of flavor unless it's smoked paprika. It does have a stronger flavor. But I'm going to opt out of that. And I'm just going to stick to the coriander, bay leaf, salt, and pepper. You can choose there. Now it's the choose your own adventure. What are you going to do? Oh, and then the final thing was at this point, again, for the sake of practice and creativity, we're all going to add one more vegetable, if you have it, to your soup. So I'm going to choose Lucinto kale. You can look in your fridge and pick something. Maybe you have some fennel, maybe you have broccoli, maybe you have cauliflower, asparagus. Be creative, see what you have. And if you don't have anything, just remember this is like a fun way for next time you find a soup recipe. What's one little tweak that you can do to not only build your confidence, to boost preference, um, and flavor and nutrients? So it's just a great thing to try to do. So I'm going to grab my Lucinto kale. I'm going to grab like probably 2 leaves. I just got this today. It's really nice and crisp and fresh. So actually, let's see, I'm going to do like this much. All right. Okay. And then because I'm going to be boiling this in the soup or simmering it for a while, normally I would destem my Lucinto kale because the stems take a lot longer than the leaves to cook. But because it is the soup, I'm going to keep them on and I'm just going to chop them down and I'm going to leave the stems and use the whole entire leaf. I'm just cutting it into thin strips. So whatever vegetable add-on you're choosing, and maybe you're playing with the seasoning. Maybe you're deciding that you want to try the turmeric or the coriander, the cumin, the paprika, all of them. And just for that, for measurements, it's a half a teaspoon of ground coriander, a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. So the ratio there is heavier on the cumin, less on the paprika, and on the paprika and the coriander. Yeah. Okay. So now it's time to get cooking. So grab your pot, whatever you're going to use. So normally I use this a cast iron pot, but I already made a soup and it has old soup. So I'm going to use this. It's a little bit flatter and wider, but it still makes a really yummy soup. So grab your olive oil or your avocado oil. All right, and you're going to put 2 tablespoons of avocado oil in your pot. And let me see if I can switch vantage points for you guys too now. Let me move to a new spot. Let's see. That's too low. Okay, this is better for now. All right, because now I'm going to be, sorry, my cabinet's there, but I'm going to be cooking. So, okay, let's see. So we want to start with the olive oil, and then we're going to do the garlic, the onion, and the spices. So whatever you're choosing. So I'm going to turn it on medium heat. You want to be mindful for this beginning part. You don't want to burn your garlic. It's a little easy to do that. If you do, it's fine. Again, your soup will survive. But so medium, maybe a smidge below medium, depending on your stove. Start to let your pan heat up. I have my garlic and my onions separate, and then I've got my salt and pepper ready to go. Sip of water. Just letting my pan get a little hotter before we get started. Okay, so let's get ready. So olive oil on hand. We're going to start actually with the celery and the carrots. So put your 2 tablespoons. I kind of just eyeball and pour a little olive oil in. And then you're going to put your celery and your carrots. And we're going to saute those for a little bit, like 5 minutes. So I'm going to get my spoon and we're going to saute for 5 minutes, just letting these guys get tender. And again, you want to be mindful of the heat. You're not trying to necessarily get color on the vegetables. It's okay if they get a little color. You're just trying to tenderize them a little bit and soften them down. All right. And then meanwhile, you can, if there's anything else you want to get ready, if you want to check on your lentils and give them a little stir, I just kind of put my finger in there. You're going to cook them and you're the chef of your meal. So it's okay. Um, there we go. Now we got my celery and carrots going. And then again, if anyone has any lentil soup favorite ads that they like to do, share with the group. I'm going to get my island. This is actually the best thing, this little movable island. I'm going to get that out of the way. And I'm actually going to put on, I've been trying to be better about wearing aprons because I keep getting oil and things on my clothes. And that's why we have aprons. So note to self, don't be lazy and wear your apron unless you're in house clothes. Okay. Got my celery. Now we got good heat going. I kind of was being impatient and jumped the gun a little bit. A couple more minutes, just getting these guys to saute down. And say you were in a bind and you were in a hurry and you just didn't want to take the time to do this. Even if you put this all into a pressure cooker, you just put all these ingredients. I don't use the pressure cooker a lot, but I believe you just put all the ingredients and you hit start and it makes a really delicious soup. So if something can be done like that, sometimes I'm like, okay, can I bend the rules a little bit? Again, I'm sure a chef or someone who's trained is going to probably feel differently, but because we're just in here cooking, if you don't have the time and you just kind of put everything in and simmered it, or you just didn't want to hassle, you're still going to end up with a really yummy soup. All right. You can start to tell that your vegetables, in case you're newer to cooking, that they're getting somewhere when they start to change color. They'll start to get more vibrant in color, which I love because I love cooking with colorful foods. It makes me feel good to know I'm going to eat all these fresh, yummy, colorful foods. And so I was just now looking 32 ounces, 8 ounces to a cup. This is where my measurements are the best. Here, what we could do is do this. I'm much more of an eyeball cooker. Okay, so this is, let's dust it out. This is 4 cups. This is 32 ounces because I know there's 8 ounces to a cup, but sometimes the measuring cup seems smaller than that. But maybe my mind is playing tricks on me. So I'm going to just fill this up and see. Oh, well, right here on the side, it says 32 ounces is 4 cups. This shows you guys how often I use measuring cups. So per the recipe, I would be 2 cups short of water. Of broth. So I'm going to just substitute the rest with water. All right. And now my carrots and my celery, it's looking pretty good. If I didn't use a timer, you can see, but you can kind of just tell, and I can feel it's been about 5 minutes. So next we're gonna add the onion and the garlic and the seasoning. So here go my onions, and now it's gonna start to smell so good, especially if you're using some of the different herbs and spices. So let's go with, I'm going to play with the coriander. And so I also always like to smell when I'm using an herb that I don't usually put in something. I like to give a smell because then you kind of get a sense of what flavor and you start to learn what you're adding in to your soup. So I'm going to just start with a little bit. You can always add more. You can't take it into my hand. And that's about a teaspoon ish. And then I start from there. And we'll just start to mix all that up. Let me add a little pepper too. I'm going to go by eye with the pepper and sprinkle on top, but I'd start with like a quarter or half a teaspoon. You can, again, you can always add more. You can't take it out. So if you're trying to kind of cook by eye, start on the conservative side, and then you can always add more. And at this point, like I said, you want to be mindful that you don't overcook the. I'm being so messy with my stirring today. You want to be mindful you just don't overcook the garlic and burn it. All right, so I'm playing with my heat. And I'm actually going to add a touch more olive oil. I like my food with plenty of olive oil, so I'm going to put a little more. Mine was looking dry. And that's fine. You just start to learn as you cook more. You can kind of tell, and you start to build preferences. And you're like, oh, okay, this did need a little bit more oil, or maybe I should have chopped these. Now I see why I should have chopped them in XY way, and you start to learn. So the more you do it, the more you learn. All right, we've got that going. Let's see what we're going to do next. Yep, I just am double checking what I would do. So we're just going to add everything else now. So you're going to grab your tomatoes. And if it's the canned tomatoes, you're going to put them in. I'm going to stir mine around for just like 30 seconds and get them with a nice flavor of the onions and the celery and the carrots and the oil, salt and pepper. Just mix everything around nicely. There we go. And then meanwhile, I'm going to strain my lentils, and then we're going to put the lentils in, the broth, the bay leaf. We're going to let it simmer, and that's pretty much it. All right, my lentils are ready to go. And they go. And this normally, I'm trying to stay on track with the recipe. If I was making it just by myself and I was eyeballing and I didn't pull up this recipe, I would have added, I would have made it for a single sized portion, which would be maybe a portion of two. So I might have halved it. In this case, I'm going to have a lot of wonderful soup. So I'm probably going to freeze them, or I'm going to get a jar and give it to one of my friends. I did not forget about my Jacinto kale, by the way. I'm going to add the kale in, but because the kale is such a soft vegetable, I'm just waiting until I put the broth in. All right, let's clear. I like to clear as I go. So take a second to kind of clear your dance space. Let's get the bay leaf ready so we don't forget. Salt and pepper handy. We've got the kale. All right, now we're going to add the broth. So you're going to add your 6 cups. And if you need a little bit more, you're going to add a little bit more water. Awesome. I'm going to be right to the brim with my pot here. All right, here's my extra 2 cups water, and I'm going to go slow. Right there. I didn't even need the whole thing. And then I'm just going to give it a little stir just to mix everything really slowly, because remember, I'm using that wide pan. I should have probably gotten one of my pots out. And now I'm actually going to add my Jacinto kale. So I'm just going to sprinkle that in and then bring this whole thing to a simmer. Meanwhile, let's grab the bay leaf. So I'm going to add, I think the recipe actually says two, but I think I'm going to put three. I like the flavor of bay leaf. And it also depends on the size of your bay leaves. So, like these guys are little. So I feel like this is like, then there's this guy. So I think I'm going to do maybe like these three. Actually, I'm going to do one more too. So you can see I use bay leaf a lot. I buy the Big Daddy. Okay, and now let's get the bay leaves. I like to submerge them, make sure they get in the broth so that they get nice flavor. And again, we're going to bring this to a simmer, and then we'll get to chopping our parsley. Okay, and now would also be a good time if you were going to make a piece of fish on the side, some sausage, some chicken or something. Now that you have it all on the stove and you're going to get it to a simmer and cover it, that would be a great time to pop open your oven 400, get a piece of fish, pop something into the air fryer, maybe not saute, brown some ground beef or patties or whatever. It's just an option to add on, or this is totally suitable for your meal, which is going to be my meal tonight. And like I said, I'm going to get some cheese. So let's get the rest of our ingredients ready. I'm going to pop us back over to the other angle. Drop the salt. Okay, let's come back over here. Get my okay, there we go. All right, and let's see. Let me turn this around. Okay, so now chopping the parsley, and this is, again, no hard and fast rules. I'm gonna do just like a big chunk. I'm gonna put some in now because I like the flavor, but then we're gonna save some for after as a little bit of a fresh topper too. So let's see what the actual recipe says. Mhm. Oh, and this recipe actually says to add 2 handfuls of spinach or kale too. So spinach is another good one to add. I don't think I mentioned that, but really any vegetable for your bonus vegetable, you could have done anything. Okay, so maybe I don't even see the parsley. So maybe that's just what we're gonna do. So we're adding in the parsley. I'm just gonna rip this handful off. That's it. I like to keep my parsley in these little glass jars because sometimes with fresh herbs I forget about them in my fridge really easily, and so I like to have them out, and they're really cute and pretty, um, and they just smell nice, and I like to have them. So, anyways, just a fun little thing about the herbs. And now I'm just gonna chop these up. And they smell so good when you start chopping. I love parsley. So again, if in case you just joined in on the live, what we're doing is making a lentil soup. And I was saying how traditionally for lentil soup, because I've made it so many times, I don't really follow a recipe. But for today's sake, for us to be uniform and to have a skeleton, I just went ahead and just did like a chat GPT basic lentil soup. And I'm using that as, a reference, but also showing that recipes really can just be a guide. That's what I love about cooking. Baking, I can't speak to baking. That's different. But cooking, there's so much room for creativity and improvisation and modifications and stuff like that. So I love a recipe to even get the method or the how, and then putting my own twist on it. So let me grab another little bowl for my parsley. All right, and we're going to set the parsley aside, but I am going to put a couple pinches. I'm going to add some to my soup now. So I'm just putting a few pinches. And then it's nice to just have chopped parsley for like a day or so. If it's extra, you can add it to your eggs in the morning. You can put it on top of avocado toast. When you have all these fresh ingredients and you get used to just having them, I save. There's no amount too small to save, guys. You never know where you can put that last little scoop of pico, again, maybe on your eggs or something like that. So I have these little top things too that are so nice. These little like huggable tops. And so usually I can find one that just fits. I think this green one will be it. that fits right on top like a little lid. So for my parsley to go in the fridge. All right. And then again, this is like a good opportunity. Let's do a little cleanup. So regroup in the kitchen and then we'll uh, move on to some other things while we're waiting for the soup to cook. Okay, normally too, another thing that I would do while the soup is simmering, so mine's almost ready to be covered. Another thing I would do is clean my dishes. So I like to clean as I go. My mom was like that, so I followed suit. I'm sure sometimes there's certain things it doesn't have to be perfectly clean every time after every step, but it does help. Like right now, we've got everything at a simmer. If you don't want to do additional meal prepping, now would be a good time to reset the kitchen, clean everything, wipe everything down, clean the dishes that you used, so that after dinner, there's less dishes. Okay, if you want to do meal prep right now, we're going to simmer the soup about 30 minutes, 25, maybe 35. It depends on preference again. And um, just the depth of your bowl, lots of different things. So at about 25 minutes in, we'll check. So mine's almost ready. It's almost to a simmer. And then I'll reduce it and we'll cover it and set a timer. But until then, you have a couple options. Like I said, you can clean your kitchen or you can start to meal prep something else for tomorrow. Um, Looks like because Josh didn't eat all his broccoli, I do already have some broccoli. So I'm going to throw that in a container. But if you have other vegetables that you want to have ready for bowls or sides or things like that, snacks, now would be a good time to meal prep some of those items. If you haven't gone to the store and you just maybe ran to the store to get the ingredients for this, now would be a fantastic time to take inventory of your kitchen. What do you have in your pantry? What do you have in your fridge? A second to regroup. So you could then sit and make your grocery list for the week. So even though, and if you've done all those things and your kitchen's clean and your meal prepped, you can either relax or maybe you have another errand to do. But I do like to use this time because you're already in the kitchen to either cook something else, to meal prep, to prep your kitchen. I still I'm going to put this broccoli away. I'm not going to do my dishes while we're on live because that's annoying. And I'm going to get my cheese ready. I'm not going to eat toast with mine. Um, I try to be gluten free. I'm not like 100%. And when I do eat bread, I will eat. We have this really delicious bakery in Newport, Rye Goods, and they make really great fermented sprouted goods, sourdough, all the things, really delicious bread. So I do have some at times, but I don't think we're running low, and I'm just not in the mood. I'm not super hungry. I had a nice big lunch, so I'm gonna cut the cheese and get that ready. Put the broccoli away, and I hope you find something productive to do right now too, while we wait for the soup to come to a simmer. And that was so easy, right? Lentil soup. If you've never made it before, really easy. And then essentially you can apply that framework to any soup. So if you were going to make a navy bean soup, you could do the same, essentially the same process, right? You might switch up the ingredients a little bit, but the steps and the idea are the same. You could have added bell peppers to your soup. I'm trying to think of other ideas as I just popped in my fridge. I saw that. Okay. All right, mine's ready to be covered. So I'm going to just cover. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. I'm going to start there. I always start lower. I think I have PTSD from like burning stuff or forgetting about it. So again, you can always cook longer. If you overcook it, it's overcooked. You can always add in more seasoning. If it's over seasoned, it's over seasoned. So I just covered mine, set the timer for 25 minutes. I'm going to grab my cheese. So I absolutely love cheese. And while I'm minimal with dairy, I still do love to eat some dairy. Everybody's different. If dairy doesn't do well with you, I'm sorry, unless you don't like cheese. But if you can tolerate some dairy, and I do suggest trying different types of dairy even different quality does make a difference in the way that I digest. So maybe it does for you too. Um, Manchego, I got this at Sprouts. It's just a really yummy. I love Manchego cheese. It's made traditionally with sheep, so that's the good part. Let's do a little taste test. So good. Okay, I could literally eat that whole block. All right, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna cut a few pieces for later, so I have it ready to go. Oh, you know what else would be good on the side? If you have some like olives or pepperoncinis or something like that, that could kind of be nice on the side too with your bread, little fresh olive oil drizzled on top. Such a nice meal. And I know there's a lot of praise about protein at every meal. First of all, lentils do have protein, but that's why I'm not really a jump on the craze kind of wellness person. I kind of learn what works best for me. I think about, my cultural eating, how Greek people, I've been raised by people who make Greek food and who are raised on Greek food. And I think that makes a difference. So I, um, I don't make it, I do try to eat enough protein, but I don't make it like such a big deal that I have to have protein at every meal. So like tonight, there's protein in the beans. That's enough for me. I'm going to have some cheese and it's going to be a delicious meal, especially if you had a nice little piece of bread too. Yeah. I have just found that if you follow wellness long enough and you're in wellness long enough, you'll realize that things come and go like fashion. And what's funny is that food shouldn't be like trendy or fashionable. The main bottom line is you want to be eating whole, healthy, fresh, good ingredients and try to cook more at home in your kitchen. It's really hard to find those good, fresh, quality ingredients when you're on the go and out and about, especially if you're in different types of places. We're lucky here in Orange County. If you live in LA County, you're pretty lucky too. There's lots of options in different places, but not everybody has those options. And the options out there are oftentimes not the greatest. Sure, maybe sometimes if you're on a road trip and you got to pick up some in and out on the way, or, life happens and these places are there for convenience, right? But if we make everything too convenient and we're going there all the time, then we're not balancing out. So the idea is you want to have a good, healthy balance. And if you can skew more towards nice, healthy, fresh food cooked at home, if you can, you do your best. But that's mainly it. I don't follow any type. I've never been paleo. I've never been. The only thing I have done because of the MS is an anti-inflammatory diet. An anti-inflammatory diet, though, is actually specific to your body's needs. Mostly people who have some sensitivities, it's dairy and gluten. So when I first started, it was very strict with the dairy and gluten. But as I've evolved over the years, um, it's kind of like levers. I'm always sort of watching, and I can tell through my digestion, through bloating, through gut, through stool, through all those things, if my body's in a happy, balanced place or if it needs some tweaking. So I'm always kind of just like tweaking and moving along and trying to keep inflammation low in my body and nice, healthy, good foods. Okay. So now that's it. I don't know what you chose to do for your task, but rather than sitting here and talking into the abyss for 20 minutes, again, if you have any questions when you jump on and you cook your recipe, please let me know. If you have any feedback, if you have any fun things that you like to add to your lentils, any different ways that you make your lentils, the group I'm sure would love to hear. When we collaborate together, it's the best. Remember, when you have recipes, there you can by all means go by the recipe if you're new to cooking and that's what makes you feel good. But if you feel like being creative and starting to try to test your skills a little and see what you can do, try to step outside of the recipe a little bit or add your own twists and touches, so that you make food your own and you eat food that you love based on the preferences that you like. Okay, and Coco, there's Coco. She's here. She's ready for her dinner. So, with that, I'm going to leave you guys. I hope your soup turns out delicious. Please, again, let me know. Message me, DM me. Your fresh parsley is going to go on at the end as a topper if you'd like. Okay, everything's always optional. So, oh, and the other thing we do, sorry, is I add vinegar to my lentils. So my mom has always done that. It's I'm assuming, I guess, a Greek thing. I'm not sure. Greek, chime in. Do you guys add vinegar to all your lentils? Anyways, I also add vinegar to my lentils in the end, right when I'm going to eat them. So if you want to give that a try, I suggest start with a little bit. You can always add more, like we've said. All right, guys, I hope you have a fantastic evening or day or whatever, whenever you're watching this video and you try your lentil soup. We'll be back on Cooking Live in 1 month. So the last Sunday of every month. If you want to move with me, we move every Monday at 8:30 a.m. for 30 minutes. And if you want to meditate with me, it's every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. All right, guys, I hope you have a fabulous evening.